So this video shows how I config on AWS for my personal project multi-tenancy grading system. And you can see on the screen, I have 5 different AWS EC2 instance, one instance named portal. This portal instance will hold the portal side application where the grader come in, to set up the grading attribute for each tenant, and then the rest for each of the instance will hold the grading page application where the grader gonna come in to part the UML and grade um, to do a grading. So after you have 5 different AWS EC2 instance, the next thing you're gonna do, which you create a target group that associate with each tenant. So let's take a look at how I create the target group. As you can see on the screen, I have 5 different target groups. Of course, each target group will be associated with one instance that I created earlier. For example, the portal target group will be associated with the portal instance that I created earlier. As you can see on the screen I highlight here, the portal target group will be associated with portal instance. Similar for Kang target group will be associated with Kang instance. So after you create Kang, the target group, in order for the application scalable, so you need to do some auto scaling setup so that your application is able to scale horizontally. So let's see how I set up the auto scaling group. Okay, for demo purposes, because I only have 15 minutes, but I need to show everything. So in this demo, I only show one of the auto scaling group that I set up here. This auto scaling group, it will be associated with the portal target group. But in order for AWS know how to scalable, which is how to add more instance, remove instance, so we need to set up the policy. So let's take a look at what policy that I set up for this auto scaling group. For this auto scaling group, I'm gonna do the following. If the CPU utilization less than 15%, I just remove the one instance from that. If it's the CPU utilization is have more than 40%, I'm gonna add one more instance. So this is how you set up the auto scaling group to make your application horizontally scalable. So after you set up the auto scaling group, you set up the target group and AWS EC2 instance. The next thing you're gonna do, which is set up the load balancer. So let's see how I do it. So as you might know, Amazon AWS provide 2 different type of load balancer, which is application load balancer and classic load balancer. Because of this project, I'm gonna choose application load balancer because it support the path routing. So let's see how I configure it. From the config load balancer page, you just provide a name. For example, I'm gonna provide compute to 81 as a name of this load balancer. The scheme I'm gonna choose, which is internet facing. The next thing you're gonna do, which is config the listener, which is tell load balancer which port they're gonna listen when the requests come in. For this project, I set up port 8080. The next thing you're gonna do, which is set up the availability zone. Because I choose the scheme as an internet facing for this load balancer, it requires that you need to have 2 different subnet. So for this one, I'm gonna set up, but before that, you need to select the VPC, of course. Alright, so I'm gonna select one of the VPC that I created earlier. In this particular VPC, I have 2 different AZ, US West 1A and US West 1C, but because it requires only 2 different subnet, I only choose. And you can see on US West 1C, they have 2 different subnet, one public and one private. So I'm gonna choose 2 different public in different 2 AZ. Alright, so the next thing you're gonna do, okay, alright. The next thing you're gonna do, which is config the security group. So I'm gonna select one of the existing security group that I created earlier, which is compete281-me-dmz. Next thing you're gonna do, which is attach the default target group to this load balancer. But I'm gonna do it here because I already created that application load balancer earlier. So let's take a look at. Let's go back to dashboard and see. Alright, so as I stated earlier that I already attached the default target group, which is the portal, as you can see right here, to this particular application load balancing. However, in order for multi-tenancy, in order to set up the multi-tenancy on application load balancer based on the path routing, so I need to set up some path routing rule for this particular load balancer. Know when which request come in, they know how it's gonna serve this request. So let's take a look at the rule that I set up. And you can see on the screen, I have 5 different target group, and of course, I'm gonna have 5 different rule. So let's say if the URL have the contact root sun mean the name of one of the tenant that I have for this project. So if the URL contain the contact root last sun and follow with whatever, it's gonna forward to sun target group. And similar for Harsha, Muktamath, and Kang. And of course, if the URL contact would not fall into one of the first 4 rules, it's gonna go to the default one, which is the portal target group. That's how I config on AWS. But before, in order to for this application in order to config multi-tenancy, I need to set up the database side as well. So one of the solution that I use for this particular project, which is the fixed column extension. But before that, let's take a look at one of the RDS AWS instance that I created for this project. Alright, so you can see on the screen, I have one of the AWS RDS instance up and running right now. It is a MySQL, so let's try to connect to it to see which table that I created in order to make the project become multi-tenancy. Alright, so let's try to disconnect this one. You can see on the screen, I already created a connection to connect to that AWS RDS instance. So let's try to connect to it. Alright, so you can see I have 3 different tables on this project. So in order to set up multi-tenancy on the database side, you can see the tenant table will contain all the tenant information, for example, tenant ID, tenant name, etc. The tenant field will be host all the grading attribute, for example, scale, point, complete or non-complete, and common. The next one, which is tenant data. This tenant data will host all the tenant data for this particular project. So that is how I config on AWS side, and then how I config on the database side in order to make the project become multi-tenancy. Alright, so next thing I'm gonna show you the demo of my application. Let's demo our application. But before that, I need to get the DNS hostname for this application load balancer. Alright, as I stated earlier, this application load balancer will be listening on the port 8080. So let's try to access the application on port 8080. Alright, so this is the homepage of the portal application. So let's try to log in into the system as a grader. Alright, so after you log in, so you're gonna go to the tenant setup tab, where you're gonna set up the gradient attribute for each tenant. So let's try to access one of the tenant here. Alright, as you can see on the screen, I have 4 different gradient attributes, and then I have 4 different tenants. For the demo purposes, I'm gonna turn on one gradient attribute for each tenant. So for this tenant, I'm gonna turn on the scale attribute. That means when I access his gradient page, I will only see scale gradient attribute on his page. So let's take a look at. Yeah, so as you can see, I only see the scale gradient attribute on Harsha gradient page. So let's go to another tenant. So let's go to tenant B, which is car lot. For car lot, I only want to see the point gradient attribute when I go to his gradient page. Yep. And you can see only point gradient attribute on card lot gradient page. Alright, let's do the rest of two. For Kang, I only want to see complete or non-complete gradient attribute on his page. Well, let's check it. Alright, so only complete. Cool. So let's do for the last tenant. For Sung, I only need to see comment as a gradient attribute on his gradient page. Yep, only comment. But now I change my mind. I want on Sun gradient page, I want more gradient attribute. So let's close it and go back and reset Sun. For Sun, as I chose earlier, I only turn on the comment attribute, but now I want to turn on another one, which is scale. So when I access Sun gradient page, I'm supposed to see two different gradient attributes, which is scale and comment. So let's go to that. You can see scale and comment is show up on Sun gradient page. So now let's see how each tenant they gonna do a UML parsing for each project. So for Sun, I'm gonna choose, okay, for demo purposes, the parser only need to test on the test for .zip file. So let's try to test his application to see if his UML parsing job file working. Alright, so now I unzip it and I try to parse. Alright, so this is some UML parsing diagram. It looked pretty to me, so I'm gonna create him. Test for scale 100%, and I give his comment good job. Now I try to save it. Alright, so now I want to check back and see that if his grade was persisted. Yep, the test 4 with the scale 100, and I give his comment which is good job. Alright, so let's do the rest of the tenant. Alright, let's access tenant A, which is the first one, only scale gradient attribute will turn on. Alright, let's try to see if his UML jar file working. Unzip it, and I'll try to parse it. Alright, so this is Harsha UML diagram. So let me try to make it smaller so it's gonna show all his UML diagram. Alright, so this is his UML diagram generated from the test for zip file. Alright, it looked complete to me. Alright, so I'm gonna save it and then give him 100. Let's save it. Now I want to see if his grade were persisted. Yeah, test for 100. Let's do for the rest of that. Tenant B, which is card loss. Test 4. I try to unzip it. And now try to parse it. Alright, so this is card loss UML diagram. Alright, it looked pretty to me. So I'm gonna give him 100 points. Let's try to save it. And now I want to check and see if his grade get persisted. Yep, test 4, 100 points. Alright, so let's do for the last one, which is Kang. I only set up the CNC, which is complete or non-complete gradient attribute. Alright, let's try to unzip his file. And then try to parse it. Alright, so it looked pretty to me and it looked pretty good. So I'm gonna give him a completed project. Let's see that if its grade get persisted. Yeah, the test 4 complete on, that means he completed. Alright, so that's our application. Thank you.